Welcome to View from the Top. I'm Modele Sharafa Yusuf. I'm glad that you could join us today as I speak with renowned economist and former governor of the central bank, Professor Charles Soludo. Professor Soludo first caught the imagination of Nigerians as a member of the very powerful economic team in the Obasanjo administration. But as you'll soon find out, there's a lot to Professor Soludo that you don't know. Stay tuned and find out. A former colleague of yours, Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili, recently raised an alarm over the cost of governance. To what extent do you share?
I think this is a problem that has gone on for too long. The cost of governance in Nigeria is without doubt too high. Actually, it's outrageous. The problem, it's not just recognized today. If you read the National Economic Empowerment and Development Strategy, which I happen to be the chair coordinator in the drafting, the Obasanjo's reform agenda for his second term, we recognize that when a chapter is actually on public sector reforms. Professionalization, that's when all these things about monetization, all the programs designed to really streamline, cut back dramatically the size of government. Then as a chief economic advisor, before I went to central bank, I saw tens, DGs of tens of parastatals came to see me during the preparation of the 2004 budget. And that's what those were parastatals I heard about for the first time. And telling you about giving them budget. And I asked some of them, what have you produced in the last 5 years? Oh, they will give you an excuse, inadequate funding. I said, so in the last 5 years, there is nothing that the country would miss if you are not there. You haven't done anything in the last 5 years because of inadequate funding. So if the country has managed 5 years without you, we can as well do without you. You have these hundreds of parastatals that the country doesn't need. Just guzzling that. The cost of governance had all ramifications. I think she basically talked about the National Assembly. I pointed out that in my piece, a lecture I gave June 4, 2010 at the University of Nigeria. I made essentially the same point, the cost of governance and the National Assembly. And when you scale it, I'm not just talking in absolute terms. As an economist, I think in relative terms. Sometimes absolute numbers give very confusing picture. If I knew we were going to ask this question, I'll probably have, crunched some numbers and giving you scaling the cost, because the example she used, I think, probably with that of National Assembly from what I read in the newspapers. If you scale it relative to the per capita income of Nigeria, what it costs on the average to keep a member of the National Assembly to work, relative to a country with a per capita income, if you share all the income of Nigeria among the entire population per person, you barely have $1,000 each. If you scale it by that, that's when you actually appreciate how humongous the cost of governance in Nigeria, the assemblies, the executive branch, I'm not just limiting it to the assemblies, but also the wider cost of governance at all levels. That's why the consumption part of the national budget overwhelms everything else. You can't transform the national economy with the chunk of the national budget that just goes into consumption. Where is the part for to build the infrastructure? Where is the part to build the capital goods? That is the bedrock. It's investment that transforms any economy. It's not consumption that transforms an economy.
Talking about the economy, economists like yourself and the Minister of Finance tell us that the Nigerian economy is growing. Try to tell that to the artisan down the road who's barely able to feed himself. What are the indicators of a growing economy?
Don't get me into trouble with this one. It's a deep question with a very long answer, but I will give you 2-3 dimensions of it. The first is that the piece I wrote on the back page of this day, my very first piece, was entitled, "Do You Believe Nigeria Statistics?" Question mark. That was the very first piece that I wrote. And there I showed that our numbers don't add up. We don't know whether we are growing as fast as we are said to be growing, or whether we are even growing faster. We don't know.
What do we have to do to find that out?
So I think Nigeria has to be serious. It has to be serious in terms of the national data system. We need to invest in that seriously. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So it's a very serious question, serious issue. You know, since the Obasanjo years in our second term, the economy has been on autopilot, growing 6-7%, 7%, 6-7%. That's what it's said to be. Okay?
That's what we're told. That's what we're told.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I said. And my argument is that, and more importantly, this growth is said to be led by the non-oil sector, which makes it even more interesting. The bulk of the poor people are in agriculture and in the rural areas. If we are growing as fast as that, there is no other country in the world that is growing at that rate of growth, and that poverty over a period of 10, 15 years has not gone down by half. So in our own case, we have a paradox where the economy is said to be growing at 6-7%, almost on autopilot, and that every year, just crank it, just another 6-7%. Whether the price of oil doubles or goes down in half is the same rate of growth. You know, so, but at the same time, paradoxically, we are growing so fast and growing very poorly. It's a paradox. You are saying you are growing richer and growing poorer at the same time.